All right, so we're going to be continuing the session until around 8 o'clock. Inshallah, the plan is once we have exhausted all of the questions and answers to the best of our ability here, then I am willing to take personal sessions in the library. So for those of you who have more personal questions you don't want to share in the open, that you want to discuss with me privately for counseling or otherwise, feel free to approach me, and then we can do that instead. So that's open to anyone else here, inshallah. Okay. So if we are ready to begin, I am willing to take questions from the first willing participant. Yes, sir. Okay. Have a discussion like this. One of the things that I think is problematic with sort of the relationship between the youth and many of their parents is that, as I noted earlier, kids sometimes have difficulty trusting their parents about their and what their reactions are going to be. And really the best solution towards opening your own household for these sort of discussions is by first sitting them down and having the discussion about what your reaction is going to be. I know that's like a preliminary talk. Be like, so sit down your son or your daughter and be like, hey, I have this idea. Like, I want to talk about these subjects, but I don't know how you feel about them, and I want to know how you think I feel about them. That's really it, right? And then see what your kids will be very honest with you. They'll probably say like, I'm shy or I'm scared or maybe, I'm afraid how you're going to. And then you just reassure them like, look, if you have a problem with something, I promise you, wallahi, I'm not going to be upset or anything. I just want to know what you're thinking. I want to know how you feel about certain things. And if I ask you a question, I want you to be able to approach me. So I'm just going to tell you now that if there's something that you have in mind that's bothering you, you can come to me. Wallahi, I will not punish you. I will not treat you bad. Okay, if you're scared, don't be scared, and don't be ashamed. Don't be shy. I'm here for you. I'm your father. I took care of you since you came out of your mother, right? I was there for you when you were delivered. I saw you when you first gave your first cry. You don't think I'll take care of you? Reassure them in that manner. Be very personal. It's going to be hard because you have to break down the walls sometimes. You have to make yourself vulnerable. And it's hard because even for kids, it makes them feel uncomfortable because sometimes they're used to seeing their parents as like these walls, like these stone walls that sometimes maybe don't have emotions or are kind of alien to their own space and their own existence. So being vulnerable is a good way to break that barrier down, to break that perception down. And it may not work at first. They may not be it may not be easy to talk to them at first, but over time, as you continue to remind them, they'll kind of they'll come closer to having those discussions. But it may take some time, depending on how close you already are with them. So, but that's the first step, inshallah. Any other questions, sisters? No. Okay. Because you're talking amongst yourselves, so I assume there's something that you wish to discuss. Oh, okay. Thank you. Jazakallah khair. I appreciate it. I have a translator, mashallah. Okay. Um, Anyone for the brothers? Young brothers? Regarding any sort of doubts or arguments that you may have heard or seen online or otherwise, issues with friends, family members, people that you know, anything is up for discussion. Again, inshallah, if it's too personal, we can have a private discourse. They've set up the library for me for those of you who want to have a one-on-one counseling session. So we can do that if you wish. I have no problem with that. It's okay. Huh? Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. 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 Well, talk about the hudud. Okay, yeah. Promoting promoting the. Hmm. Well, I mean, there is a punishment for the promotion of kufr among the Muslims. Among the Muslims, yes, that amounts to blasphemy and apostasy. Yeah, of course. Likewise, we don't have control in respects with regard to the sexual acts. Even among the heterosexuals with zina, we can't. you know, So I mean, when we talk about, I want to be very clear that the acts themselves and even the promotion of such are condemned and corrected. That is undeniable because that is part of our tradition. How we go about it, has to be strategic because we don't live in an Islamic society, right? It's not as inexcusable as it would be, say, if we were in like a traditional Islamic society and these like, acts occurred, then the punishment is far more valid in that sense without any sort of, passive correction. Because I mean, it's just obvious you shouldn't do those things, right? It's established that you shouldn't do those things. You've been taught not to do those things, and the punishment is in the legal books. It can be implemented as minorities in the society, however, where the Sharia cannot be implemented in the criminal level, in the same way that in Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ was trying to establish Islam prior to the establishment of the state, right, he took a very different approach, right? And in that sense, all I'm asking for is I'm not asking for people to say it's okay. I'm not asking people to say not to say anything. What I am saying is watch your tone and watch the way that you approach the brothers and sisters because it's not as easy as correcting it in an Islamic society. Today, I mean, they will, during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during Mecca period, right? If he was harsh of heart and rude with them, they would have dispersed from him. In the same way, we are in the same position, right? We have to show more compassion and love because there really is a genuine confusion and an influence, an alien influence that we can't control, right? So in many ways, they're not excused from the sin, but they are excused in many respects from our harsh penalties and our harsh punishments. In the same way, another example, when we look at the Islamic tradition, we have to look at the circumstance of the people. So during the time of Omar, may Allah be pleased with him when he was the caliph, right? We all know this story. When there was a drought, the people started stealing food. And many people asked, well, why we should punish them? We should apply the hudud. He said, I can't. Because, it wouldn't be just to these people. They're dying, right? They have no other means to survive. So he suspended it for some time being until the society rectified itself. In the same way, many traditional scholars have said, in reality, we can't really punish for zina in certain places because at the same time, we allow society to run rampant with pornography, run rampant with the inability to get married. We make marriage so difficult as well. The government is not even attempting to resolve a lot of the issues that our ummah has, right? And then we want to go around punishing people. And yet at the same time, we allow this filth to exist within our own societies. And then we blame them. And we want to punish. Well, we're going to resolve the issue. If we bring back the hudud, you hear this a lot. If we bring back the hudud from some, if we bring back the hudud, that'll resolve the issues. But the pornography will stay. All they're going to do is bring it underground, right? Who here has read a lot about American history, by the way? We know this psychologically, too. Do you know what the Prohibition period was? You ever heard of the Prohibition period? It's when they banned alcohol in the United States. Now, that's good for us. Alhamdulillah, we say Islamically. Except the problem was when they did it during this time, the culture was not prepared for that. They all wanted to drink alcohol. They just suddenly happened. The government was like, okay, you can't drink alcohol anymore. They didn't teach them why they shouldn't drink alcohol. They didn't say why. They just said, okay, we're going to do it because it's bad. And what happened? Over the next couple of years, alcohol consumption and production went underground. The mafia took control of it. It became a criminal act. It made chaos throughout society because the people themselves were not receptive to that. They still believed alcohol was okay. And it's the same reason that the Quran was revealed gradually to the pagan Arabs. We talked about this earlier. Some of my brothers, we were discussing this when we were eating, right? What happened when the companions came to Islam, right? During the first couple of years, was alcohol banned? No. In fact, the first injunction was that you don't come to the masjid drunk. Okay, that was actually one of the first injunctions that was revealed about alcohol consumption. So in fact, many of the companions during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, prior to its restriction, prior to being banned, were actually drinking alcohol. Some of them quite profusely. Okay? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing the condition of man, knew that it had to take time to implement those values in them. So when the injunction finally came to ban alcohol, it was easy for the community. Because Islam was so deeply embedded into their hearts, they literally took all their alcohol, they poured it on the streets. It said Medina, the alcohol rose above their ankles. It was so easy. Like it was nothing. They just dunked it in the streets like it was nothing. Right? Why was that? But it had been revealed earlier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that they would not accept that. Right? So in the same way that that Allah has revealed the Quran in these sort of injunctions, and the Prophet ﷺ dealt with the community in the early stages, right? We also have to do that because we're living in a very similar time period where Muslims are not even attached to their faith. We talk about how do we deal with the LGBT issue? Well, first off, a lot of these young Muslims who are going towards that, have we talked about some of the basics? Some of these kids don't even know their proper aqidah. Some of them don't even know how to pray properly. Don't even know the significance of why they believe they're religious. They don't even understand. They don't understand anything. Like I talked earlier about the seerah of the Prophet. Many of these young people don't even know how the Prophet ﷺ lived. And we want to punish them. I'm not saying you, I'm saying just other people. We want to punish. That's our first instinct. We want to punish. We want to condemn. We want to. They don't even understand why you want to punish them. Right? So what are we doing? That's only pushing them further away. Right? So that's why I'm saying these things. And I know some people, they misinterpret what I'm trying to say. Again, not you. I'm talking about others. They try to misinterpret what I say, thinking that I'm trying to condone or promote this. I'm not. I'm telling you what Quran and Sunnah is asking of us for these people. I'm telling you what the tradition is telling us about these people and how to deal with these problems. It's not easy. It's much easier to yell or to condemn and to be outright, this is wrong, astaghfirullah, done, khalas, okay? But that is not the prophetic methodology. That is not the prophetic methodology. There is a time to be harsh. I agree with you. There is a time to be harsh. There's a time to go to battle. Right? No. Oh. Yeah. No, I agree with you. No, yeah, I agree with you. And that's the thing. People need to understand about Islam because even a lot of the liberal sort of Muslims, they misconstrue prophetic mercy to imply pacifism or to imply always being okay with things or being happy and compassionate. That is wrong. The Prophet ﷺ was a very balanced individual, extremely strategic in the way that he dealt with people of different personality types, different cultures. He even spoke different dialects to different tribes. He even spoke in different accents to people to get them to understand him. He was the most strategic person, the most pragmatic person when it comes to dealing with people. Some people he would give one piece of advice and then a completely different piece of advice. And then the companions would approach him asking him, well, why did you give this? Different type of person, different situation, different mentality, different personality. It depends. Sometimes he would say, some people say, well, how can I help? How can I correct my life? He would say to this person, don't be angry. But he wouldn't say the same thing to another person because that person had an anger problem, right? That's also why it's dangerous to read hadith out of context, because sometimes we universalize his advice to one person to the entire ummah when it doesn't actually apply, right? Like there's, well, I don't want to give too many examples, but anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is that we are a community of wasatiyah. It's not being in the middle position for the sake of being in the middle. That's not what it means. It means being balanced. It means not going to one extreme or to the other. It's realizing the complexities of a situation. It's having wisdom about how we deal with things, right? If you need to be harsh, sometimes you do. For example, earlier I was talking to sisters about an arrogant person. How do you deal with an arrogant person? Depends. If the arrogant person is trying to win a debate with you and just you, walk away, say salam, done, khalas. If that arrogant person is leading other people astray, you debate them for the sake of those around, to protect those other people from deviance, right? Depends on the situation, the circumstance. You don't always have to fight. You don't have to walk away. Be wise in your decisions in how you deal with people. So that's all I'm asking. And I will continue to try to be as nuanced as possible here, because if we always use one tool to fix everything, we end up breaking the whole house, right? So we have to be very cautious, right? A hammer is very attractive, especially for men, in fixing just about anything in the world. But if that's all you know how to use as a hammer, you're not going to get very far. So, any questions? Sisters? I'm sure you have questions, so I'm asking you. That's okay. Any subject. Why do you want to fit in? That's my first question. I'm gonna, hmm. Okay, so are you talking about like a public school? You're surrounded by non-Muslims and you want to fit in? Because I understand the social stigma, right? You don't want to feel alien to people. You don't want to be rejected. You don't want to be treated like garbage, right? It's a hard existence. Yeah. Welcome to Islam. Uh, I'm not trying to be, but no. Let me try to give you some practical advice. Um, so, for example, one of the most obvious features about you is that you wear different clothing from your peers, right? And there are probably at times where you feel tempted to look more like your peers because you don't like to stand out in a negative fashion, right? I get it. It's a horrible time to be. You're a teenager, right? You're high school. You're where? Middle school. What is that now? Is that like junior high? What grade is that? You're in seventh grade? Oh, seventh. Okay, so yeah, that's like junior high school. So you're during a time period where like you really want to be accepted by your peers. You're kind of trying to figure out your own identity. And look, I'm not going to tell you it's easy. I'm not going to give you like the easiest answer in the world, and you go, oh yeah, I've solved my problems. Okay, that's not how it's going to be. You're going to have struggles. But let me ask you some questions. Like, what is the one thing that a lot of the kids around you promote about themselves? That like, do they say like things like, oh, we're unique, we're individuals, we decide things for ourselves, thing like that. But then they want you to conform. Kind of a contradiction in the way I know how high school works. Okay, you have a lot of kids thinking they're so unique and everything and that they're special, but then they all want to be the same. And then they always blast people for being different than them, right? Um, that's something you need to realize, right? The sense of conformity is really in many ways, especially in Western society, it's mostly an issue of insecurity. Okay. The reason you're drawn to it is because you don't want their condemnations, right? But if you conform for them to escape the condemnation, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're not going to escape the condemnation because they're going to find another reason to condemn you. What do I mean by that? Because the moment that you superficially give up your own identity and your own beliefs and values for them, they'll notice that you're being a fake, that you don't really believe, that you don't really follow, that there's always some sort of anxiety and angst in the way that you approach things. Because you won't be comfortable when you do that, I promise you. All right, you won't. Because there's constant pressure to conform. Especially in the high school setting, there's constant pressure. Even women and men, they're always competing, in terms of looks, in terms of social status. You're going to have to keep changing constantly to appease these people. Your situation will not change. You will, and you probably won't like it. I'm being straight with you, and the reason, and let me, because I'm giving you my own personal experience as a non-Muslim in a secular school. That was my situation. I hated high school with a passion. I was happy to be suspended on numerous occasions. Okay, I was not a good high school student. I had a horrible grade point average. I was a terrible person, right? Like nobody could envy me in the slightest. I tried to stay away from school as much as possible. It wasn't until college that my life changed. Because when you get to college, nobody cares about your high school days. It was funny because, so I was kind of like an outcast in high school, miserable time. The moment I got into college, I became very popular. And I'll tell you why. Because people change, their mentality changes when they jump into college. When they grow up a little bit more, they start to perceive things in a less superficial sense, right? So, for example, all the jocks, all the popular kids in high school, they're losers in college. They're losers. Nobody cares that you had a good football career in college. In high school. Nobody cares that you were the top cheerleader in high school. Nobody. Once you get into college, all that goes away. The whole dynamic changes, okay? But you're probably wondering, okay, well, if that makes sense, but still, I have to go through this for the next couple of years. Okay, that's going to be miserable for me. What am I supposed to do? You know what I did? I found a good friend group outside of high school to hang out with. And to be honest with you, I didn't care that nobody accepted me in high school because I was going to see these losers again. So it didn't matter, So I had a fun time with my friends outside. We had same values, same look on life, and they held me up. So my advice to you, honestly, is like you can't change that situation by changing yourself. Okay, don't, because you're only going to be. It's a superficial change anyway. You're only going to be messing up your life and becoming more and more confused as a result, and you'll be miserable. Promise. You're going to be miserable. So find a good group of friends outside. Do your schoolwork and stuff. You don't have to go to social events. Just don't even, who cares? I know you think it's a big deal. It's not. Nobody cares about high school after high school. Like nobody. Ask any college student here. They will tell you high school is meaningless. Okay? Nobody remembers who you were in high school. It's actually in college where you start actually establishing your life and even your friendships. That's the reality. Anyone who's been to college knows that, right? That's really where you start to grow and you start to, be a person. So I know this all sounds difficult to grasp at first because you're feeling these emotions, but I promise you that the best solution right now is to find a group of friends outside. And look, hi, and don't even if you feel like you're an alien in that high school culture, let me be frank with you. You are. You're like, oh man, Why? But here's the thing. It's actually pretty good. It's a good thing. You have values that are going to transcend those emotions eventually. You're going to be happy about it. Maybe not right now. Maybe if you're thinking to yourself, this is miserable. But as you keep growing, even next year, you're going to have a very different mentality. You get into eighth grade, ninth grade, you start meeting more friends and stuff. You'll be fine. But yeah, don't be tempted. Please don't. You're going to hate yourself. I promise you. You're going to look back at this conference, this conversation right now. If you go down that route and you're going to go, I wish I listened to him. Okay. Okay. All right. So, oh, any other sisters? Huh? Everything's social pressure. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth? I mean, we all want to be accepted on some level, fundamental level, right? But not all of us fit in the same groups anyway. Even in high school, you have cliques. I mean, even in high school, it's fragmented. TikTok, I hate TikTok. It's not because I'm a boomer. I just hate TikTok. I'll tell you, you want to know why I hate TikTok? Let me tell you why I hate TikTok. Okay, I'm going to be very frank with you. It's not about the entertainment stuff. It's not about that stuff. Okay, so I've been noticing something for decades now, right? So, context for those who don't know, I'm a professional librarian. Okay, so that's my job. All right, so I actually teach things like information literacy. Okay, and the level of understanding what you read has dropped dramatically in the past decade. Like people can't read like two sentences without losing concentration. But they need a meme or like a 5 second, 10-second video to see what's going on. And the reason social media has sort of produced levels of distraction that has actually destroyed our levels of concentration, right, and our understanding of the world. In fact, today kids don't read anymore. They don't want to. It's boring. It's not really boring. It's like they've been taught that it's boring. If you actually tried to read something you enjoy, you'd actually get really involved in it because it's very natural to use our imagination to see the world in that way, to envision things. But the social media culture of TikTok and Twitter and things like that has reduced everything, dumbed it all down, and has flooded us with these little sound bites and tidbits that we think that this is normal, this is something that we should be consuming, and that it's okay. And yeah, sure, it's entertaining, it's distracting. But the reality is, let me tell you something that you probably already know, but you haven't admitted. When you spend 2-3 hours on TikTok, you remember about 2 minutes of it. You're scrolling through all this stuff, going, "Oh, this is funny," but I bet you 100% you don't even remember what you laughed at. You're laughing because it's true. Why don't you remember what you laughed at? Right? I mean, it's kind of concerning, don't you think? You can scroll through something for 2 or 3 hours and not even remember like 90% of what you were looking at. It's like going to the zoo and only remembering that you saw like a goldfish. It's like, what other animals exist in the zoo? I don't know. Right? It should tell you something about the mediums that you're using. Look, I'm not saying don't be entertained. Okay, I'm going to admit something right now. There's probably you're all going to lose trust in me and sincerity in me, but I'm a gamer. Okay, there you go. I just admitted my life to you, right? And let me give you some background as to why. When I was growing up, we were actually very poor, and I couldn't afford like a Nintendo system, like the original Nintendos. But I had a hack. My grandfather fixed arcade machines, so every week he would bring arcade machines to our backyard, and I got to play arcade machines in my backyard. Like I'm talking like the full arcade machines. I played Pac-Man and Galaga. You probably don't know what those are, but yes, but those were a big deal back then. Okay, so I've always loved these little entertainment, these forms of entertainment. So I've been not obsessed, but these are sort of my hobbies since I was very young. Okay. Do you know what a Nintendo Switch is? I have three of them, and I have 150 games. Okay. So I understand entertainment. I like entertainment. Okay. I'm a collector. So I'm not saying entertainment is bad per se, but if it's detrimental to you, if you're not actually even understanding what you're doing, if you're just being distracted, if it becomes an obsession that has no benefit whatsoever, is it really entertainment or are you just wasting time? Like literally wasting, not just because your parents are telling you you're wasting time, because you're just literally just wasting your existence. Like you're wasting. So that's what I'm trying to say. What's the value of TikTok? No, really. What is the value of it? I know what's on TikTok, by the way. There's a lot of bad stuff on TikTok. Okay, so you want to talk about the haram elements of it, we can do that too, since we're already in the subject. But I don't agree with a lot of some da'is say, I use TikTok for dawah. I said, astaghfirullah. They say, why? Mufti Mank's on there. I said, I don't think you should be on there. Because every time you open up an Islamic video, there's another video right next to it with some girls dancing in a very provocative manner. You want to do dawah and then you got a video over here like this? It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but we have to reach the youth. Why don't you just tell the youth not to use TikTok? It's not like Facebook. I mean, you can actually block some things and, it's not always in your face. But like TikTok, it's like it's literally the moment you open the program, there's like something you shouldn't be seeing, right? You shouldn't have TikTok. Both psychologically, it's not good for you. In terms of haram content, it's bad for you. I'm just being frank, sister. And be honest with yourselves. If you have TikTok, what benefit is it giving you? Again, I'm not saying you can't be entertained, but what is even the entertainment? Like, honestly, you don't even remember half the things you're scrolling through. It's useless. And they even found there's even other psychological effects to it. And I'm pretty sure you've all experienced it, especially the sisters. And here we're going to talk about gender differences. I apologize. But sisters have more of a propensity to being depressed when they see certain images. I think you know what I'm talking about. Sisters more than brothers, on general, not just Muslims, but also non-Muslims, have a tendency to compare themselves to other women. Okay? This happens a lot. It's a natural inclination. All right. Right? We have a lot of sisters who have become depressed and suicidal as a result of these social media platforms. Not intentionally. It's just because of how they're programmed. The worst of these is TikTok and Twitter. Right. These are the worst. I have some social media accounts. I have a Facebook because I have to communicate and stuff like that. But I got rid of Twitter. I don't have Instagram. You can call me a boomer all you want, but I see no reason to even bother with them. And it's not even just for the haram content. I'm just not interested. You're probably, well, that's just, you're old and stupid. Well, no, it's just, there's really nothing there. It's all fake. Even these Instagram influencers that make like tons of money off of your clicks, they are the worst people in existence. They're the worst people in existence. I'm sorry to be judgmental, but these people are the worst people in existence. Like, they are so fake. Taking selfies all the time and, oh, look at how special my life is. And they're the most miserable people. Like, I'm sorry, no offense to you too. If you take pictures of your food all the time, I don't get that. I just want to eat. You keep taking pictures of your food, you're ruining the experience. And now instead of not being, let me be a little bit more serious. They actually did studies as well on this. They found that people who take too many pictures actually have a lower understanding of their own experiences and what they did. So for example, if you go to a nice, beautiful place in the mountains or something and you're just constantly snapping, they said you actually forget more of what you were doing and understanding of the situation. Like, people who don't take pictures have a more vivid memory of actually what occurred. They can tell you more details about the events because they were paying attention to what was actually going on instead of trying to take a nice picture, right? Like I can tell you what I did 15 years ago in Chicago on a certain day, or actually I can tell you about all my adventures in Malaysia because I didn't take pictures of it. It's very vivid in my memory, right? But if you're constantly taking pictures for other people, or so I can remember it later, which is an excuse, by the way, because we all know that's an excuse, right? We do. Okay, you're not going to have appreciation for that. You're really not. So I'm sorry to go on this rant. My point is, and I said this yesterday, is that social media is a delusion. It's not reality. It's being constantly sold to us as a means to communicate and to engage with the rest of humanity on a global scale. But the reality is it sells us an image to sell ads. That's the purpose of you scrolling, is so the ads can be seen and Facebook and others can make money. They don't care if what you're seeing is objectively true or the actual thing. All they care about is that you stay on the page. Okay, they've already done numerous studies on these things. And in fact, we know there's even real-world consequences aside from psychology because of this. Do we know about the Rohingya genocide? Everyone here know what's happening to the Rohingyans in Myanmar? Do you know how those lynching mobs were formed? Certain Facebook groups promoting anti-Muslim propaganda. It was social media climate that has been spreading these conspiracy theories and anti-Muslim sentiments. Even during the Trump era, which was just very recent, many of the attacks on Muslims and many of even attacks on non-Muslims and even other racial groups and stuff were primarily fomented on social media platforms. Not from real world news, not from actual experience, but because of propaganda on social media. That's why Facebook is now under scrutiny. And Zuckerberg might be fined and other such things because he knows, as well as everyone else, that they sold you lies for money. Many of our own brothers and sisters have been killed, assaulted because of propaganda on these platforms. And then we go on there and we go, oh, this is how the world works. No. I said, I'm not take away your entertainment. I'm not trying to take away your social circles. What I'm asking you to do is realize that what you're seeing is not really the case, and these platforms are not important. So again, I'm going to give the same challenge I gave yesterday. If you have social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok, etc., I'm not asking you to drop them immediately, although I hope you do. Take 2 weeks to not look at them. You can do 2 weeks. I think it's easy. I was going to say a month, but then you would cry. Okay, I know. Do 2 weeks. And then ask yourself sincerely, after that 2-week period, if you can control yourself, ask yourself sincerely if you look at things a little bit differently. If you're a little happier. If maybe you're not as concerned about certain things as you used to be. If maybe you're a little happier that you didn't hear the latest news. Because the reality is a lot of this stuff is irrelevant to you anyway. And I guarantee that after that 2-week period, you will feel a slight difference. And then if you think you can do it, do another week. And then if you do go back to check things, realize something else. All your friends and your followers or whatever probably didn't even know you were missing. They probably didn't care. Yes. I'll be frank with you. Like, nothing happened when you were gone. The world did not change as a result of you leaving that social media sphere, right? And then ask yourself another question when you realize all this stuff. Do I need to be on here 24/7 scrolling down and wasting my time? I'd say video games are a lot better, actually. so reading a book is a lot better. Entertaining yourself in other ways is a lot better. Try to find something a little bit more substantial. And of course, don't be obsessed with it, but realize that there are issues with these platforms. Okay, I've ranted for a very long time on this, but I'm very passionate about it because I've seen how it affects people, even adults. Like, you have no idea. I have to teach like grown people in college how to research. And it's like they don't even know what a source is. They don't know how to look things up. I'm not talking about Google. That's not looking things up, by the way. I'm talking about like looking up like academic papers and scientific things like to understand if they're what they're reading is true. Like, I have to teach people how to do these things. This should be basic knowledge at primary school level. But today, things people have been expected that I have to sit them down and explain these basics. Like, okay, like just because you read this in this newspaper doesn't mean that it's true. you know? And I have to force people sometimes to read more than two sentences. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I read this paragraph. I'm done." I'm like, "Keep going." You know, it's hard. We've convinced ourselves that we can consume knowledge in 2 seconds or 10 seconds. Oh, this is another thing. I'm going to rant one more time. I'm sorry. Oh, I hate this so much. Sometimes I get told when I'm trying to teach, "Can you condense it in 10 minutes?" I say, Astaghfirullah. I ask them, "Okay, are you going to college?" They say, "Yes." I say, "How long does it take to get your degree?" 4 years, 6 years. I said, "Can you condense it in 10 minutes? Please?" You know? Imagine if you said that to your professors. "No, but you want to learn fiqh in 10 minutes. You want to learn seerah in 10 minutes. You want me to give you sound bites in 10 minutes. This is a disrespect towards knowledge. And it's also delusional because no, you can't learn something in 10 minutes. You can be distracted in 10 minutes, but you won't remember anything. You might remember one point, but it'd probably be out of context. The world is not that easy. It never will be. So if you think a meme or a one paragraph or something can tell you something about the world, you're only kidding yourself. That's not reality. Okay, so now I'm done ranting about that. I apologize. So it annoys me to no end. So yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sister. Oh, what do you mean in terms of like how it happened? Oh, okay. So you just want me to talk about my reversion story? All right. So it's not that exciting, but I don't have like a really dramatic story to tell. But basically, I was doing my undergrad. I was a senior in, or was I a junior? I know I was a junior in university, junior in college. And so I was about to complete my bachelor's degree and I was doing philosophy. And I had a friend in one of my philosophy courses who was Muslim. So we got to talking, and at that time I was already doubting my Christianity. I was a Christian at the time. And I had some problems with Christianity, and we can discuss those issues if you'd like to. I can tell you some of my arguments. They're kind of fun. Um, and so he started talking to me, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come by the masjid and you can talk to the imam if you have any questions." So I did for 6 months. So I went and talked to him for 6 months. We had debates back and forth. Very philosophical individual. And he answered all my questions, and I was convinced of Islam. Now, it doesn't end there because I didn't want to revert at first because I was scared of the social stigma and being rejected by my society. So, sister, when I talk about those things, I'm talking from personal experience, not simply from my past, but also from my becoming a Muslim. So that was something that was concerning to me. And so it took me a little while. But the reason I reverted eventually, that I finally came out and took my Shahada, is because of what I found out about my ancestors. So I'm a Spaniard by ethnicity. Okay. Now I have an American accent and stuff because I was born and raised here. I was also adopted, so I don't have any sort of connection other than, you know, living here and stuff. So, but I am a Spaniard by ethnicity, right? Now, I do have some connections with other family, like my grandmother and stuff. So I still talk to them. And so one day I was researching about Islam, and I was looking at the history, and I found out that there were Muslims in Spain at one point. So I was like, what would be really funny is if my ancestors were Muslims, right? So I started looking up my genealogy. And so my Spanish last name is Rosario. And Rosario is a Spanish word for rosary. Okay, so it's the little beads that the Catholics would use. And I always wondered, okay, well, that's because my family was Catholic. But then I kept going a little further, right? And I found out that the word Rosario, that the name Rosario, didn't come about until a few hundred years ago, during this time called the Reconquista. Does anyone know what the Reconquista is? You know Islamic history? So the Reconquista is when the Christians took Andalus back, and they would force the Muslims to become Catholics, and they gave them different names. So one of the names they gave to some Catholic families was the name Rosario, because they used the tasbih in their dua and in their dhikr. Okay? So I thought, okay, that was interesting. But it doesn't prove anything yet. I could be related, but it doesn't prove anything. So then I was talking to my Uncle Eddie, who happens to, by the way, live in California. We call him Uncle Eddie. He's my real uncle, okay? And he's a Spaniard. And so I'm talking to Uncle Eddie one day, and we're talking about this subject and stuff like that. And I forgot what it was, but I think I needed some help with the form or something, and I needed him to sign off on it or whatever. And I said, "Can you do this for me?" And so he signed his real name. Now, here's the funny thing. I didn't know what his real name was up until this point. I always called him Uncle Eddie. I assume he just called him, like, maybe his name was Eduardo or something because he didn't like to be called Eduardo, so he's called himself Eddie, right? So I looked at the form, Abdul Said. And I was like, okay, so I asked, I was like, so Eddie, why do you have the name Abdul Said? He said, well, your grandmother called me that. Right, and I said, okay, so I called Grandma. I was like, Grandma, why did you call your son Abdul Said? She said, it's been a tradition in my family for generations to give the sons Arab names. That doesn't sound very Catholic. And I said, okay, some more evidence. And eventually I did some more research, and I found that my family had a small farm outside of Cordoba during this period of time. And I found out that my family were Moriscos. And Morisco was the term that they gave to a Muslim who was forced to convert to Catholicism. I also found out that some of my other family members were slaughtered. Because for those who don't know about Al-Andalus, it was a genocide. So then I found out that, in fact, my ancestors were Muslims. Alhamdulillah. So as a result of that, I already convinced of Islam, but I found that to be a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I reverted on the spot. And I took the name Ali. Okay. So for me, this is not simply the truth, it's also part of my existence. And then I found my cousin a few months later, Al-Andalusi from Portugal. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's also a famous da'i from the UK. And then I reconnected with my other brothers and sisters. So that was the reason that I reverted to Islam. So alhamdulillah. So if you want to know some of the arguments that I used against my former beliefs, I can tell you those are fun. Anyone want like a really good argument against Christianity? Is this okay? We still have time? I think we do. So, have you ever had discussions with Christians about your beliefs? Okay, yes, a lot. You know, it's always something funny about Jesus that really kind of bothered me in Christian theology. It wasn't that necessarily that they believed he was God, but some of the other things they believed about him. So let me give you something that really bothered me about the whole idea of Jesus in Christianity. It always made me doubt. It's the whole idea of sacrifice. Sacrifice, right? What do I mean? Well, okay, so in Christian theology, God is considered perfect. He's a perfect being. We consider the same thing in Islam, right? So in Christianity, God is considered perfect. He can't change, right? He doesn't need anything, right? Right? He's complete. Now here's the problem. Jesus had to be sacrificed, meaning God had to give something up to save humanity. Can a perfect being who doesn't need anything, complete, can he give something up? Can a perfect being sacrifice something? So for example, I can sacrifice my life to protect my family, right? But can God give something up of himself in order to save somebody or save humanity? Because if he could, what would happen? He wouldn't be perfect. He wouldn't be God anymore. See, that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Because what does sacrifice mean to God? God has everything. He can't give it. Oh, I gave my only son to save you. What? What does that mean? Well, Jesus was God, so he gave up his own life. What, God can't give up his own life. What are you talking about? God can't die. Well, he was resurrected. He didn't really die. Well, then is it a sacrifice? Because if it really wasn't a sacrifice, if it's just symbolic, then what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. Right? It's meaningless. Because it's like saying if I the bus analogy, say a bus is coming towards my family, and then I pull my family out of the way, right? And I save their life. And then I look at them and I see, I sacrificed myself for you. That doesn't make any sense. I didn't do anything. I just pulled them out of the way. Now, if I jumped in front of the bus and killed myself to save them, then that's a sacrifice. But just moving them out of the way doesn't mean I'm sacrificing. It's the same thing with the concept of God in Christianity. He didn't do anything. He can't. The concept of him giving something up, it makes no sense. He's God. Well, he sacrificed himself on the cross. What? Like he would feel that. Like he's God. It's like nothing. Right? I mean, it makes no sense. It's ridiculous. Right? And God doesn't need to do that anyway. He's God. He doesn't need to go through these theatrics. If he wants to forgive the world, he'll just be like, be and it is. Khalas. It's insulting. The Christian theology is insulting to Allah. It makes him look weak and powerless and insignificant. It brings him down to the level of a human being, literally. And then it says to worship him. To me, that's always been a conundrum with Christianity. It's always been a problem. Something you can use if you ever have a discussion. Is it, why do you believe in a God that in reality can't sacrifice, and even if he could, that wouldn't make him God? It seems a little bit advanced at first, but once you kind of understand it, it makes a lot of sense, right? So, any more questions? Anyone want to do, we have some time left, I believe. If there aren't any more public questions, we can also do personal counseling sessions if any of you are interested, if you have any personal issues, problems, or things that you don't want to discuss in the open because maybe you're embarrassed or you feel, it's not appropriate. We could do that in private as well. We have the library reserved for that purpose, and I will give as much time as I can as possible to each and every one of you who decides to do that. If you would like, you can approach me at the end, and then inshallah we can do that, okay? So feel free to approach me. And inshallah, I think that's because, we still have about an hour. Inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so jazakallah khair for having me. Again, it was a privilege to be here. I will be here for the remaining period of time, I think in the morning until the early, leaving in the afternoon actually, yes. Yeah, the early afternoon. So, but it's been a privilege and an honor to be here. I truly appreciate you listening to me rant and rave and listening to me give my opinions on these things. And in all honesty, if I've said anything that is wrong or inappropriate, I do apologize. It was not my intention. please ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me for that. And I only ask for your dua. And again, thank you. I hope that I can come back in some time and see how the community has grown. And I do pray that you've benefited from this as much as I have, inshallah. So thank you again. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, jazakumullah khair, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward Ustadh Ali. MashaAllah, he came all the way from Georgia, just purely really to give us his experience, and MashaAllah, we get the benefit from it. Please keep him in your dua. May Allah reward you all for anybody who spend any time in here, inshallah. We still have a few boxes of food. Feel free to pick it up and take it home, inshallah. So, jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And like Ustadh Ali said, if you have any specific personal stuff, he has till Isha time, inshallah, we can do so. And we'll call it a night. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.